My name is Clara. I am 30 years old. I have a secret that I have kept for 2 years. Not a small secret, a big one. The kind of secret that changes how you see every single day. The kind that makes you careful about what you say and how you say it. The kind that lives in your chest like a stone that you have learned to carry. My secret is this. The man I work for is my husband. His name is James. He is the CEO of a company called Hartwell Group. Every morning I bring him coffee. Every afternoon I arrange his meetings. Every evening I say goodnight, Mr. Hartwell, and he says goodnight, Miss Clara, and we go to our separate homes because he does not know we are married. It started on a Saturday 2 years ago. James and I got married in a small church outside the city. It was a quiet ceremony, just us and a few close friends. James had proposed 6 months before. I had said yes before he finished the sentence. We had been together for 2 years. He was the most wonderful person I had ever met. Thoughtful, funny, careful with me in the best way. The wedding was beautiful, not expensive, but beautiful. We wrote our own vows. James cried a little when he said his. I cried more than a little when I said mine. Afterward, we had dinner with our friends, and we danced in the small hall attached to the church. James held me close and said he was the luckiest man he had ever heard of. I believed him completely. We were supposed to leave for our honeymoon the next morning. We were going to Italy. James had planned everything carefully. The tickets were printed. The suitcases were packed. That night, we stayed in a small hotel near the airport. It was perfect. We were so happy that night. That kind of simple, overwhelming happiness that you do not expect to end. The next morning, James went out early to get us breakfast. I was still in bed reading. I heard a sound from outside, a very loud sound. Then my phone rang. It was the hospital. James had been hit by a car at the street corner near the hotel. He was alive, but he had hit his head very badly. The doctors used a word I had to look up afterward. The injury was traumatic. It means something happened to the brain. I ran to the hospital, still in my pajamas. James was in a bed with machines around him. His head was bandaged. He was awake but very confused. A nurse came and took me aside. She explained what had happened. She said James had a severe head injury. She said he had lost his memory. Not all of it, but most of the recent years. He did not remember the last 3 years of his life. He did not remember me. When I walked into his room, he looked at me with polite blank eyes. He said hello. I said, James, it is me. It is Clara. He looked at my face carefully. He said, I am sorry. He said my name did not sound familiar. He said the doctor had told him he had lost some memories. He said he was sorry if he should know me. He said it very gently. He did not want to hurt me. The next days were the hardest of my life. James was confused and frightened and trying very hard to be polite to everyone, including me. He was kind. He was always kind. But he had no memory of our life together. No memory of our 2 years. No memory of our wedding. The ring was on my finger. He did not recognize it as something connected to him. The doctors said the memory might come back slowly. They said it was hard to predict with this kind of injury. They said the brain was complex and unpredictable. They said time and patience were the most important things. They said to keep the environment calm and familiar. They said do not overwhelm him with too much information at once. They said let things come back naturally, if they were going to come back at all. I spoke to a doctor alone. I told her we had just gotten married the day before. She was very careful with her words. She said James's family had been contacted. She said his parents were arriving from another city. She said he would be going to stay with them during his recovery. She looked at me with kind, careful eyes. She said I should think about what was best for James right now and not about what I needed. James's parents arrived. His mother hugged me and cried. She knew me. She loved me. But she said the doctor was right. She said James needed to be somewhere familiar. She said, please be patient, Clara. She said he was still James inside. He just did not know how to find himself right now. I nodded. I held her hand. I did not cry until I was in the elevator, alone going back to the lobby. I went back to the city alone. I sat in our apartment. His things were everywhere. His books, his coffee cup, the jacket he had left on the chair the Friday morning before the wedding. I sat in our apartment and I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. My husband was alive, but I had lost him completely. The most confusing kind of grief. Grief with someone still breathing. For 2 months, James stayed with his parents. His mother sent me small updates. She said his memories of childhood were clear and vivid. His memories of university were mostly clear, but the last 3 years remained mostly blank. He remembered the company. He remembered his work. But personal memories from the last 3 years were largely gone. Our entire relationship was in that blank space. I went to work every day. I kept applying for positions. I needed money, and I needed to be busy. My brain would not let me sit still. Then his company called me. They had received my earlier application for an executive assistant position. Now they were calling to offer me an interview. James was recovering and going back to work part-time. They needed someone immediately. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I accepted the interview. I went. I did not tell them James and I were married. I answered their questions professionally. They offered me the position. I accepted. The deeper truth was simple and impossible to explain to anyone. I needed to be near him. I needed to see him every day. I needed proof that he was real and alive and still in the world, even if he did not know who I was. The first morning, I walked into the Hartwell Group offices, and James looked up from his desk. I felt my heart do something complicated and painful. He looked at me the same way he had in the hospital. Polite, attentive, blank. He said good morning. He said he had been told I was his new assistant. He said his name was James Hartwell. He reached out his hand. I shook it. I said my name was Clara. He smiled and said, nice to meet you, Clara. He had the same smile, exactly the same. That first week, I learned the routine. James was a good boss, calm and organized. He did not raise his voice. He said please and thank you. He asked me about my background. I told him I had worked in administration before. I said I liked organizing complex schedules. All of that was true. None of it touched the real truth. He nodded and said he was glad I was here. He said the office had been chaotic since his accident. By the second week, I had settled into the role. I was good at it. I knew James. I knew his habits from 2 years of being with him. I knew he liked his coffee with a little more milk than the instructions on the machine suggested. I knew he forgot to eat lunch if no one reminded him. I knew he worked best in the morning before his meetings started. I arranged his schedule around these things without explaining how I knew them. James sometimes paused and looked at me in a particular way, like something was almost coming back, but not quite. He would look at me from across the room and then look away. He never mentioned it. I did not ask about it. The doctor had said, let things come naturally. So I waited. Every day I waited. I brought him coffee. I answered his calls. I said good night, Mr. Hartwell, and I went home to our apartment and I waited. My days had a strange double quality. In the office, I was his professional assistant. I was efficient and organized and cheerful. I knew where every file was. I remembered every meeting and every preference. I was very good at my job. But underneath that professional surface was a different reality. Underneath, I was his wife, watching him not know me. Underneath, I was counting the days and the small signs. Month 3. James came out of his office one afternoon and stood near my desk. He was holding a book. He said, Clara, do you know anything about this author? He showed me the cover. It was an author I had introduced to him during our second year together. I had given him the book as a birthday gift. I had written something in the front. I kept my face very still. I said, yes, I know the book. I said it was excellent. He said he had found it in a pile of things in his apartment. He said it had his name written in the front and someone else's handwriting underneath. He looked at me. He said, do you know who might have written in it? I said, I did not know. He went back into his office. I sat at my desk for a moment with my hands in my lap. Month 4. Something small happened. James came out of his office in the afternoon with a piece of paper. He said, Clara, do you know this song? He had written the name of a song on the paper. It was our song, the song that had been playing when we danced at our wedding. I kept my face very still. I said, yes, I know it. I said it was a beautiful song. He looked at the paper. He said it had been in his head. He could not remember why. He went back into his office. Month 6. I came to work wearing a blue dress. I had bought it before the accident. James and I had been shopping together. He had pointed at that dress in the shop window and said that color would look beautiful on you. I had bought it. I had worn it to dinner that week. He had smiled when he saw it on me. I wore it to the office on a Tuesday, and James stopped mid-sentence when I walked in. He looked at me for a very long time. Then he said sorry. He said he had lost his thought. He did not say anything else, but he looked at the dress twice more before the day ended. Month 9. James called me into his office for a meeting. He had a box on his desk. He said someone had found it in the bottom of a desk drawer when they were cleaning. He said it had his name on it. He opened the box. Inside were wedding photos. Someone from his office had printed them after the accident and put them in his desk. The photos were still there. He had never found them until now. He looked through the photos slowly. There was one of the church, one of his parents, then one of us, together, at the altar. He stared at that photo for a long time. His face changed. Something moved behind his eyes, something slow and very deep. He looked up at me. He looked at the photo. He looked at me again. He said, Clara. His voice was different, softer. He said, Clara, who are you? I sat down across from him. I had thought about this moment for 9 months. I had rehearsed it 100 times. I had planned the perfect words. But sitting there, looking at his face, I forgot all the planned words. I just said, James. I said, you and I got married 2 days before the accident. I said, I have been your wife for almost 2 years. I said, I love you, and I have been waiting for you to come back to me. He looked at the photo. He looked at my hand. I was not wearing my ring at work. I had taken it off the day I started the job. I reached into my jacket pocket. I had been carrying my ring with me every single day for 9 months. I placed it on the desk between us. He looked at it. He picked it up. He turned it over in his fingers. On the inside of the ring was the date of our wedding and our initials intertwined. His initials and mine. He put the ring down. He stood up. He walked to the window and stood there with his back to me. I waited. The room was very quiet. Outside the office, I could hear the normal sounds of the building. Phones and printers and someone laughing in the hallway. Normal sounds. While we were in here, in the quiet of his office, with everything between us, he said, "Why did you not just tell me?" I said, "The doctor said not to overwhelm you." I said I was trying to follow their guidance. I said I needed to be near you, and this was the only way I could think of. He did not turn around yet. He said, 2 years, Clara. He said, I have been sitting across from you every day for 9 months and calling you Miss Clara and asking you to book my lunch meetings. I said yes. He turned around. His face was very complicated. He said, "Do I deserve you?" I said, "I do not know." I said, "Probably not." He made a sound that was almost a laugh. He said that sounds like something he would say to himself. He sat back down across from me. He said, "You could have told me earlier." I said I could have. I said I was scared. I said I did not know how you would react. I said the doctors kept saying to wait. I said waiting became the only thing I knew how to do. Over the next weeks, James worked through it. He met with his doctor. He talked to his parents. His mother cried again, but this time differently. He looked at every photo and every object and every piece of evidence from our 2 years together. Slowly things came back, not everything at once, not like a switch turning on, more like fog lifting, a little at a time. First feelings, then images, then words, then whole scenes. One afternoon, he knocked on my office door. I said, "Come in." He stood in the doorway. He said, "Clara, I remember something." He said he remembered a parking lot outside a restaurant on a Tuesday night, 2 years before the accident. He said I had laughed very hard at something he said and had grabbed his arm, and he had thought in that moment that he was going to ask me to marry him. He said he remembered thinking that very clearly. He said, "Why was I in a parking lot?" Laughing, I described the evening, the restaurant, the joke he had made about the menu. He smiled. He said that sounds like him. We dated again. Strange as that sounds. We went on proper dates. We held hands carefully. We learned each other again. Some things he remembered clearly. Some things came back with prompting. Some things did not come back fully, but we built new memories in their place, new moments, new stories, new small things to know about each other. One evening, he gave me back my ring. He had taken it from the desk that day and kept it. He said he wanted to propose properly this time. He said the last time had clearly not stuck well enough. He said it very dryly, and I laughed. He said, "Clara, I do not remember everything about our life before, but I remember enough to know that I chose you for a reason." He said I would choose you again. I said yes, the same way I had said it the first time. Before he finished the sentence, he put the ring on my finger. He looked at it there. He said he recognized that. He said he was glad. We sat for a long time at the kitchen table, not saying much. Some silences are full of exactly the right things. We got married again, just us in a garden at evening with 2 witnesses. Quieter than the first time, but no less real. In some ways more, because we chose each other already, knowing exactly how much there is to lose. And we chose each other anyway. Every single day since then, We have chosen each other, knowing what it cost to find each other the second time. That makes the choosing mean more than it did before. My name is Clara. I am 30 years old. I have been married to James Hartwell twice. I still work at Hartwell Group, but in a different department now. James says he finds it hard to concentrate when I am too close to his office. He says it in a way that is not a complaint. I understand him. I have always understood him. Even when he could not remember who I was, I understood exactly who he was. That did not change for one single day. Not one. There are things about those 9 months that I have never fully described to anyone. The daily experience of being in that office. What it felt like to sit outside his door and hear his voice and know things about him that he did not know about himself. There was a morning in the 5th month when he had a difficult phone call. I could hear his voice through the door. He sounded frustrated and tired. When the call ended, he was quiet for a long time. Then he opened the door and said, "Clara, could you get me a coffee, please?" And I did. I brought his coffee the way he liked it, a little more milk than the instructions said. He took the cup and looked at it, and then looked at me. He said, "How do you always know how I like it?" I said, "I am very observant." He said, He looked at the coffee. He went back inside. There was an afternoon when he had a meeting that ran long, and he missed lunch. I left a sandwich on his desk, something simple that I knew he liked, from the same place where we used to get lunch together on Saturdays before the accident. When he came out of the meeting, he saw the sandwich and stopped. He said, "Clara." I said, "Yes." He said, "Did you just know, or did someone tell you?" I said, "I guessed." He said, "You are very good at guessing." He ate the sandwich, and I went back to my desk, and I sat very still for a moment with my eyes closed. There was a Thursday evening in month 7 when the office was almost empty. Everyone had gone home. James came out of his office with his jacket on. He was leaving. He stopped at my desk. He said, "Clara, do you have somewhere to be tonight?" I said, "Not particularly." He said, "Would you like to get dinner?" He said it carefully, like a man who was uncertain about the right word for what he was suggesting. I said yes. We went to a small restaurant 2 streets from the office. We sat across from each other and talked for 2 hours. He did not know we had sat in restaurants just like this one many times. I did, but I did not tell him. I just sat there and let it feel like the beginning it was supposed to be. Those months shaped me in ways I did not expect. I became very patient. Patience I had not known I had. I became very good at holding 2 things at once. The grief and the hope together. The present and the past at the same time. I became good at finding the small things that mattered. The way he always held the door. The way he said thank you to the cleaners in the morning. The way he concentrated. The small lines between his eyebrows when he was reading something difficult. All the things I had loved before and was learning to love again from the beginning. His doctor said once that memory is not just information stored in the brain. She said memory is also in the body, in the hands, in the instincts. She said sometimes the body remembers before the mind does. I thought about this a lot during those months. I thought about the way James's coffee preference had stayed even when he forgot my name. The way he had felt something when he saw the blue dress. The way a song had stayed in his head for reasons he could not explain. His body remembering before his mind could catch up. By the time the photos came out of that desk drawer, James had already been finding his way back to me for months. He just did not have the map yet. The photos gave him the map, and when I put the ring on the desk between us, it was not a revelation, so much as a recognition, something settling into the right place, like a word you have been trying to remember all day that suddenly comes to you in the evening, and you say yes. That is exactly the word I needed. James told me once, much later, what those 9 months had felt like from his side. He said he had noticed from the first week that there was something different about me. He said I was not like the other staff. He said I knew him too well. He said he could not explain it, but he felt comfortable with me in a way that did not match how long we had known each other. He said sometimes when I brought his coffee, he had a feeling he could only describe as familiar, like a warmth that came from somewhere he could not locate. He said the blue dress had affected him significantly. He said he had gone home that evening and thought about it. He said he did not understand why a dress should make him feel that way. He said he had almost asked me about it and then decided not to because he was afraid it would sound strange. I told him it would not have sounded strange at all. He said he wished he had asked. I said it was fine. I said we had time now. He said yes. He said we had all the time in the world. We do. We have all the time in the world. We use it carefully. We do not take any of it for granted. You cannot take time for granted after you have seen how quickly everything can change. You cannot take a person for granted after you have spent 9 months being their assistant and their wife at the same time. After you have brought them coffee and said goodnight, Mr. Hartwell, and gone home to your shared apartment and looked at his things on the shelves and known that he was alive and would be okay, and that was enough for now. That had to be enough for now. My name is Clara. I am 30 years old. I have a husband named James and a ring on my finger and a life that almost did not happen. I am glad every single day that I accepted that interview, that I walked into that lobby, that I shook his hand and said my name was Clara, and he said nice to meet you. I was already his wife. He just did not know it yet, but he was already mine too, even without the memory, even without the knowing. He was already mine in all the ways that matter most. I want to tell you one more thing about the second wedding. We had it on a Thursday evening in October in the garden of James's parents' house. His mother had planted roses that summer specifically for this. She said she had wanted to do something useful with her hands while she waited. The roses were pink and white, and there were too many of them. It was perfect. James wore the same suit he had worn to our first wedding. He did not know it was the same suit. When I told him afterward, he was very quiet, and then he said he had picked it because it felt right. He said he did not know why he had grabbed that particular one from the closet. He said, sometimes you just know. I said yes. I said, sometimes you just know. My mother was there. She held my hand before I walked out into the garden, and she said, Clara, you are the bravest person I have ever watched love someone. I had not thought of it as bravery. I had thought of it as necessity. I could not have done anything else. But maybe bravery and necessity are the same thing sometimes. Maybe you are brave precisely because you cannot imagine not being. When I walked out into the garden, James was standing at the end of it, between the pink roses his mother had planted. He looked at me the way he had looked at me in the photos from the first wedding. That same particular look, like I was the answer to a question he had been thinking about all his life. His body remembered even the parts his mind had forgotten. His body had always remembered. We said simple things to each other this time, not the careful, elaborate vows we had written the first time, just simple things. I said I chose you before, and I choose you now, and I will keep choosing you. He said I may not remember everything, but I remember who I want to be with. He said, and that is you. He said it will always be you. My name is Clara. I am 30 years old. I have been married to James Hartwell twice. I love him the same way both times, completely, with everything I have. Some loves are that way. They do not diminish with difficulty. They grow larger. They become the whole of your life in the best possible way. I would do everything exactly the same. Every single day of those 9 months, every cup of coffee, every good night, Mr. Hartwell, every evening in our empty apartment waiting, all of it. I would do all of it again without hesitation to end up exactly here. 1 year after the second wedding, James and I went to Italy. We finally took the honeymoon we had never had. We flew to Rome. We stayed in a small hotel in a neighborhood that was not the famous tourist part. James had planned it carefully, just like he had planned the first honeymoon. He loves to plan things. He loves to research and to organize and to have everything ready. This is something that came back very early, before his memories, before my name. His habit of planning came back in the first weeks. His nurse told me this. She said he had started making lists in the hospital. She said that was a very good sign. In Rome, we walked for hours every day. We ate at places that were not in the guidebooks. James had found them through research. On the third evening, we sat at a table outside a small restaurant on a street I did not know. The evening was warm. The food was very good. James poured wine and said, Clara, I have been thinking about something. I said, what? He said, do you know what? I thought the first day you walked into my office. I said, what do you think? He said, I thought this person is going to be important. He said, I did not know why. He said, I just knew. He said, sometimes you just know. I looked at him across the table in Rome with the warm evening around us. I said, yes. I said, sometimes you just know. My name is Clara. I am 30 years old. I have a husband who chose me twice. I have a ring on my finger with our initials and a date that means everything to both of us. I have a job I am good at and a life I am proud of, and a story I was once afraid to tell anyone. I am not afraid anymore. Love is not always easy, and it is not always simple, but it is always worth it. Every single difficult part of it is worth every easy part that comes after.